Smash that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and like the video. This FarmBoys podcast with men's college basketball coach, mentor, teacher, Coach Lewis Wilson. I'm glad to hear that he's watched us before. Jeez. Obviously, you haven't watched any episodes.
I've seen clips that you sent me. I didn't know he was the Logan you were just referring to.
Well, if you look at the picture I sent you, you would see his picture in there.
Well, if you sent me something that we could operate instead of canceled requests.
From my understanding.
I love your background, by the way. What is that?
It's AI generated. So I asked it to create farm fields in the future with some futuristic tractors, God watching over everything. And this is what ChatGPT came up with.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, wait, here, I'll just close that. There, you can see it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. AI is our friend. At least I'm going to keep it my friend when it takes over the world. So,
and maybe
what's going on, gentlemen?
Do we need to give Coach Wilson some background, Chris, on or did you already give him background?
I haven't given him any background. I've been sending him some podcasts. I mean, he obviously hasn't seen. We've got over 100,000 viewers 4 times now, averaging over 60,000 views for podcast. But hey, he's a busy man. I get it. He's a busy guy.
Can we throw in some recruiting
those are some big numbers. You guys are out getting more views than MSNBC.
Just look at YouTube, Coach. Look at YouTube, and MSNBC is dead now. We can talk politics, definitely a different time, but
But why not here? Are there certain things? What do you want to talk about?
That's news. Isn't that just news? What do you mean politics? That was just a news ratings.
Oh my gosh! MSNBC is the arm of the DNC. Come on!
Oh, good Lord!
Come on! They're more crooked than Hillary. Give me a break.
Oh yeah, go! Hey, let's get into this. This would be great.
Yeah. So I think recruiting. Well, that's part of it. So honestly, Coach, wanted to talk about NIL, transfer portal, just some of the stuff that you hear all these pundits talking about, but I haven't heard. I've heard Saban. Saban has had a lot to talk about in football with it and stuff, but I haven't heard basketball guys talking about it. So want to get somebody who's been in basketball for a long time, has been around and been through a bunch and, just get your view and just go through some questions on NIL, transfer portal, even some gambling, and, just really wherever that takes us, it takes us.
My name is Lewis Wilson. I'm currently an assistant men's basketball coach at Loyola Marymount University, which competes in the West Coast Conference here in Los Angeles, California. I'm in my 33rd season as an NCAA men's basketball coach. My first season was in 1992. I coached for 6 years, from 1992 to 1998 at Southern Utah University. Then I went to Idaho State University, where I had the honor of meeting Chris and coaching Logan. I was at Idaho State University from 1998 to 2006 as an assistant coach under Doug Oliver. I worked for Bill Evans, who's the current coach at Eastern Utah Junior College at Southern Utah University. I worked for Doug Oliver at Idaho State University for 8 years. I left Idaho State and went to Cal State University Northridge, where I was associate head coach. I spent 4 years there with Bobby Braswell. And then I, after 19 years as an assistant coach, became a head coach at the Division II level, NCAA Division II. I was at Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado for 5 years as a head basketball coach. After 5 seasons at Alamosa, really good run there with that program. I went to Utah State University, where I was with Tim Duryea for 3 years at Utah State. I spent 1 year with Dan Marley as the associate head coach at Grand Canyon University. I was at University of Texas Tyler for 4 seasons. Spent 1 season at Utah Valley with Todd Phillips. And I am 1 year right now currently with Stan Johnson, who is a very, very close friend of mine here at Loyola Marymount University. So 33 years as a college assistant coach. I spent 4 years coaching at my high school alma mater at East Anchorage High School in Anchorage, Alaska, as an assistant boys basketball coach under the legendary coach Chuck White, who's my mentor and father figure, who gave me my first coaching opportunity, and spent 4 years there before I became a college basketball coach. So I've spent a lifetime in the game that's given me a lifetime. I've been honored and blessed to be able to spend 37 basketball seasons coaching and giving back in some small way to the game that's given me everything. So that's my athletic story.
Can you explain, using your program, for example, how the NIL works if you're talking to a recruit about NIL money?
Yeah, let's do this for your listeners. First thing is, NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. Okay, and for many, many years, the NCAA said that an athlete was not qualified for scholarship and able to make money outside of that endeavor. And the schools were able to sell a jersey with Werner or Kinghorn on it or Wilson in the stores and make a lot of money, but the person whose name was on that was not able to do that. And I always felt not that was wrong, but that they were headed down the wrong road, because if you just think about free enterprise and the way the American monetary way it's set up is like people have a right to be prosperous as long as they operate within the law. And you're saying saying that people cannot use what they are born with, which is your name, your image, and your likeness, to leverage that. I may not think you're the best looking guy in the world, Chris, but if somebody thinks you're model material and want to pay you to hawk their product because they think flexing your chest there, if they think that you're worth that and you can move their product, you're operating within the law. NC2A said you couldn't do that. They said you could not use what you had to make money. You could not monetize your name, your image, your likeness. And for years and years and years, this went on. And finally, a group of students said, I'm going to sue the NC2A. Ed O'Bannon, formerly of UCLA, he's like, I'm going to sue the NC2A. And so he went to court for years and years, and it finally gets up to the Supremes. And 4 or 5 years ago, the Supremes come down, and of course, they looked at that and they said, of course, you can't stop somebody from leveraging their name, their image, and their likeness. If Marie Callender's wants you to be on a commercial and you're not using the school, how could you say that they can't use that? So once the Supremes did that, there was nothing the NC2A could do in terms of name, image, and likeness. Unfortunately, what has happened, NIL, name, image, and likeness, metamorphosized into pay for play because it was this convergence of the portal, which is where, because they got sued on another matter, student athletes are able to enter into this mythical thing called the portal, which is really just a site where you could put your name in on the website and say, I am transferring from the school I'm at. That gave other schools permission just by you being in that portal without coaches' permission and all that other stuff. Coaches could no longer hold the power to release a student athlete. You just go to your compliance person, you say, I want to transfer, and you put you in a portal, and within minutes, you're available to any other school that wants to recruit you as long as you met the other NC2A guidelines. Well, when you take the portal...
Coach, you don't have to let the coach know?
You absolutely do not. You go to your compliance person and say, I would like to enter the portal. Now, as soon as you go in, the coach is going to know, but you would more than not letting the coach know, you no longer need their permission. The coach doesn't have to release you. You're automatically released. Now, there are some stipulations, special situations where a coach could uphold that, but that's even those things are fading away. But my point is, when you take the portal and people being ostensibly free agents, and then the Supremes say you can leverage your name, image, and likeness, what you've done is you've monetized transferring. So you have this convergence. So the NC2A goes, well, the Supremes said you could have your name, image, and likeness. We're just going to throw our hands up and just say we're not going to be involved at all. All we're going to tell you is don't use our uniform when you're on Marie Callender or whatever. You could be on there, and you could be the biggest athlete in college sports, and who cares if you have on Alabama's uniform? Everybody's going to know the quarterback. And so you getting paid X amount of dollars for people using your name, image, and likeness. Well, unfortunately, what has become is it's not so much that, it's AAU coaches and people saying, hey, if my kid goes in the portal to become available, how much money can I get from your school? When coaches are supposed to not, up until this year, be able to be involved in that at all, which is why I was talking about BYU. How would anyone really know? The coaches are not even supposed to know. That is supposed to be a completely outside entity that has entered into a business arrangement with that athlete to pay them to represent their product or products, and then they get paid a certain amount of money. But what's happened is you have third parties who say to an athlete, hey, if you transfer to school Z instead of being at school B, you could make $1 million more. Well, what goofy kid would not want that? What human being would not want that? I can tell you right now, I love LMU, but if somebody offers me $1 million more than LMU is going to pay me, there's going to be a human vapor trail out the door. So people that look down on these kids, that's ridiculous. That's money, that's life generational changing money for them. Yeah. So you can be jealous if you want.
The distinction's important, what you said, Coach, and I think that's what we really need to get across here. Coaches and the administration are not going out offering these kids the NIL money, correct?
That's against rules. NIL now, until this coming year. For the first time next year, NIL moves into the athletic administration sphere. Schools now. So technically, what is happening, we're getting closer and closer to student athletes being employees of the university. Because now the universities can pay, and that'll bring in equity for other sports. And I don't know if you saw the other day, there was a law that came down that said you have to pay, be in compliance with Title IX when you give this money out now. Now, think about what a complication that is for football and some of these sports where you don't have female sports of the like. You're going to see men's sports get dropped so that you can meet Title IX. And the basic Title IX law is whatever percent that your student population is on campus, that's how the money's supposed to be dispersed. So if you're in most schools are 50+% female, you have to have equity now in that whole NIL process. It's considered a benefit now just past last week. So schools are dealing with that. That's a whole nother ball of wax. But NIL came about because the NCAA was very slow to address the issue of pay for athletes, because they were always saying, well, how are we going to pay for swimming or non-revenue generating sports? When really they should have just said, listen, if you can make money outside of the school based on who you are, I can't stop you. Good luck. God bless. Do not use the school's uniform or the NCAA or your affiliation with it. They should have got ahead of that, but it was mandated. And once it was mandated, they threw their hands up. And when they threw their hands up, coaches being competitive for their jobs then are finding ways through AAU and other third parties and in conjunction with the portal to monetize transferring. And that's why year after year, now you could transfer 4 years in a row. And you could go on that portal. You're a free agent. It's more free agency in college athletics than there is in professional athletics. They could transfer every year, and every year they transfer, they can make more and more money. And so, that's what people have become to resent when you ask the question about, level playing field and these different things. It's like you have to have money in order to compete, because if you don't have the money or access to the boosters or the people who are willing to make the investments that somebody in Provo, Utah made, or somebody associated with Provo, Utah made, you're going to get left behind. And I don't blame BYU because they're going into that high level league. It's like you got to pay to play. And so that's what's going on. Evolution, you're going to die at the wayside.
Coach, let's get right into it. So you've been around when the NCAA wouldn't allow peanut butter or whatever to be provided on bagels for, after practice. And now all of a sudden we're in the era of NIL. And so my question to start everything off is, how has the NIL changed the way that you approach recruiting? And do you feel it creates an uneven playing field among schools?
When you've been in it for as long as I have, you've seen every manifestation in recruiting. Like, when I first got in recruiting, as you said, they wouldn't allow peanut butter on a bagel. You literally had coaches getting in trouble for providing snacks during film and different things like that. You couldn't give players rides. If you saw them in a snowstorm, you couldn't pick players up and give them a ride. That has changed a little bit. I think most things, in my opinion, have changed for the better, because I think anything that improves the lives of a student and an athlete is for the good. I think, like everything, there can be an overcorrection. As far as the level playing field, I just don't believe you'll ever have a level playing field. I think that should probably be given up on. While I think it's important to have standards and rules so that we don't have a complete disparity, I think it's very difficult to have a level playing field. Some teams play on TV and have, money that they generate through TV contracts, and that's just the way it's going to be. You're not going to be able to dictate to television who they put on. Therefore, the superpower conferences are going to reap a greater reward through television monies than, the low to mid majors. Basketball has 365 plus teams at the Division I level. About 50 of those teams are what you would call high major in terms of the programs and or the conferences they play in. So there'll always be a disparity. I think by and large, most of the rules changes in my time have been for the benefit of the student athlete, if not always for the benefit of evening a so-called playing field. I think that, the world changes. Everything changes. You and I were just talking about AI before we got on. It's like everything changes. There's an evolution in all that we do. And those that are able to evolve are able to be successful, and those that are not, like.
So being in a West Coast Conference school, would you consider your guys selves mid-major then?
Oh, I think, Gonzaga is a perennial high major basketball program, one of the top, I think, in the last 25 years what you would consider a blue blood, a team that's always in contention for a, if not national title, national prominence. St. Mary's is a high major program. I think based on that, a multiple bid league like the WCC is probably upper mid to low high major. I don't think every program is operated at a high major level. Some of us are trying to get to that level. I think certainly, a lot of that is dictated by the resources you have available vis-a-vis NIL, but also beyond NIL. What do you have in terms of finances to have the best support staff that you could possibly have, including assistant coaches? What do you have in terms of being able to feed your athletes? What do you have in terms of facilities? What boosters you have that are able to augment your program? What access you have? What type of community support do you have? So all those things go into determining that. But it's follow the money. Where the most money is, that's what determines the level you play at. To go to your question to WCC, I think WCC is considered a mid-major league, but I think that's a tough task when you have two high major men's basketball programs. And it's like rising tide lifts all boats, and the rising tide in the WCC is Gonzaga and St. Mary's. So the rest of us, in order to compete, have to elevate, and we have elevated our program. So I think you're probably dealing with a higher than a mid-major. So you'd probably say high mid-major, low high major type situation.
The reason I ask is because BYU, they just signed the number one recruit for $7 million. They were WCC for the longest time. And, getting into this, like when you have that kind of money behind your program, how do you even compete to try to get kids like that? I mean, I don't think anybody would consider BYU a perennial powerhouse, but they just got the number one recruit in the country because of NIL with $7 million. The kid isn't going to have to go to the league. He can retire after college, coach, if he invests right.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would caution you is the dollar figures that people throw around. I'll tell you what, if I went to lunch with the kid, I'd make him buy lunch, but I don't know that, that's how much money he's getting. Sometimes those numbers can be inflated or deflated. But quite frankly, there's no way to know that because that's not public, especially from a private
Coach,
school.
I'm going to share this with you, Coach. I'm going to hand it over to Logan real quick. So here's what we were looking at before you came on, was this article here on Google. AJ Dybansa, a 6'9" small forward from Utah Prep, signed a $7 million NIL deal. So this is, front office sports. Now these guys say it's 7 million, then you'll see anywhere from 5 to 7 million. So wouldn't you think that's got to be fairly accurate?
No, not necessarily.
No?
Haven't dealt in the NIL world. 5 to 7 is, first off, again, 5 to 7 is whether you get 5 million or 7 million. I'd take either one. But the truth of the matter is that's a big disparity. That's a big gap. But 5 to 7 million. So again, BYU doesn't even publish their what their coaches make because they don't have to. They're a private school. Why anyone would know what a particular recruit is getting other than what he might say or his people might say, which is to their benefit to inflate it. I have no reason to believe it's true. I have no reason to believe it's not true. I don't really care. But I can tell you right now in our league, we have guys that make, a lot of money. And so Dybansa's on paper a really good basketball player. They're in a different league right now. I don't feel that we're lucky. When they were in the WCC, they didn't win the WCC.
No.
They were not the rabbit in this league. Gonzaga has been since 1999. No knock on BYU. I just, people, it's not my business to worry about what they're paying. I just would caution anybody to be very, very leery of assuming what somebody's getting. He's getting well compensated. I agree with you. He's probably getting paid as much or more than he would in a rookie contract in the NBA. And more power to him. He seems to be a good young man, and whatever he's getting, good for him. I have no idea and can't really speculate that. But I don't necessarily. Me and my wife have had this discussion. When that came up, you just never know. I've literally been directly involved with kids that are promised X amount of money, and they may not even collect on a fraction of that.
So, Chris, can I jump in there?
Go. Yeah.
So I mean, I know people that are much closer to the BYU basketball program than I am. And I've just kind of heard the same thing, is it's it's not, the statement was, or the comment was, it's not 7 million, and it's probably not even, close to that. Although I do agree with Coach that he's getting paid something, and it's going to be, it's a lot of money. And I don't know, for me, I agree with what you said, Coach. Like, it's kind of crazy where everything has come. I was going to make the comment that the NCAA has been running one of the greatest monopolies of all time. Mm-hmm. And, it's under so I don't know how much we want to talk about that, but you think about the amount of money that, has been generated. I mean, let's just talk about the two big ones, March Madness. March Madness is incredible. One of the most amazing few days.
Last contract, $9 billion, I think. TV rights, is that right? About $9 billion?
$9 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, you got that. And then, of course, all the like college football and stuff and major games that, people really tune into. So there's billions of dollars flowing. And so for the players to get a piece of that, I think is great. I'm not in it as much as you are, Coach, like every day. I do think that, there needs to be some type of like regulation, but I'm probably not even in it as much to say like what that needs to be. But yeah, the changes are incredible.
Well, what schools did he turn down? Didn't he turn down North Carolina? Like, you've got to be getting something sweet to go to a BYU versus a North Carolina, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was a guy that probably could have gone to a lot of places. Can I just tell you that, Logan, your background is even better. That team was awesome.
Let's go.
Look at that picture.
Let's go.
That is sweet.
Hey,
the Bengals. Is that 05?
That was
05, 06, isn't it?
Yeah, that was my sophomore year. Yeah, 05, 06.
Yeah.
Yes.
You called the players, and this, especially for you as well, Logan, to think about this, they're going to be employees of the university. So now the questions come up. The equipment room guy who washes my jersey, am I going to have to tip this guy? Am I going to have to pay him part of his salary? Like, what are you going to charge me for now, university? What are you going to offer me? How do schools navigate that? If I'm a smaller school, I can't give the NIL money that these other schools are getting, but I want to be competitive. Am I going to have to start charging my kids or my NIL players for things that the non-NIL players don't have?
I don't know if you direct that, Logan. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of things that are gonna, there's a lot of things. I think the student athletes would be employees of the university already, so that you could really say, listen, men's basketball, we cap, like you do with coaches, we pay $85,000 per player, up to $85,000. Football, you get up to $100,000. Swimming, you get up to $60,000. It's based on the sport, and then the schools could say that. But I got news for you. You can't cap their money. That's just non-American. I was a restricted earnings coach when I entered college coaching back in 1992. Restricted earnings, they literally, the NCAA said that position, doesn't matter if you're at Duke or you're at Southern Utah, no one in that position can make more than $16,000 a year. They literally capped the income of the position. The position was called a restricted earnings coach. Well, eventually that trickled up to the Supreme Court, and they said that's illegal. So there was a class action suit, and they had to pay millions of dollars. I think, listen, the NCAA has been very slow to respond to things that are pretty obvious. And here's one obvious thing. You operate within the United States. You have, in a lot of cases, special rights granted to you through Congress. You have to comport with the law. You can't do things that are un-American and free enterprise, like capping income, denying people their name, image, and likeness. And so when they do these things, what happens is that when they get sued, anytime they get sued, now they just throw their hands up and they have to back off. That's all we're going through right now. There's a lot of things that have been done for a long time in which the NCAA has been wrong because it simply does not comport with normal business enterprise. If you work at it's like I'm a mechanic at this shop, they're going to say all mechanics, the most you can make is $10,000. This is a free enterprise system. That is literally the counter definition of that. Free enterprise means I have the ability to leverage my talent and skill for whatever the market is willing to pay me. And no business can collude with another business to cap. And they've done that with coaches, and they lost millions upon millions of dollars. They did that with athletes. And now the proverbial toothpaste pieces out of the tube. There's no way to take that back, because even if you pay athletes, you still can't stop those athletes from having access to those businesses, and wherever DeBonza got his money from, he could still go get that money. So he's going to actually make more money. You cannot stop them from making money. They can monetize their name, image, and likeness, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there, like you mentioned, there's regulations. You can't regulate someone's income.
Right. I will say, that's incredible what you said about making the 16,000 as a assistant at Southern Utah myself, volleyball.
I made 5,000, by the way, because they didn't have to pay you 16.
Okay.
I made 5,000 a year for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
The thing that's unfortunate, Chris, is that then what happens is when you get sued, you're going to have to pay a lot in back pay. So they came up with some formula in which, the higher end schools, they looked at the top 2 assistants on each staff, and they took the average minus 20%. And that's what you had to pay that position in back pay for whatever year. So I got back pay for 3 years as being a restricted earnings coach. And my point on all of it is the slowness of the NCAA to comport to what law of the land is has led it into these situations. And that's why we're where we're at with NIL. And NIL is a monster because it's more than name, image, and likeness now. I don't know how many athletes are actually, doing what, like it's a contract and you're supposed to do something for it, right? And so I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea. Those are private agreements. Schools, like if a kid doesn't get paid, they can't even go to the coach and say, hey, I was supposed to get this. It's like, that's between you and that business. It's no different than if you don't get paid by your company.
UNLV's quarterback who said he was promised something and he left, made big news.
Yeah.
Right. But the school couldn't do anything. The coaches, whatever, supposedly. So that's a big distinction or important distinction you made there that we started this whole thing off with, is that right now the schools cannot touch or have anything to do with the money that these kids are getting. It's all an outside entity. Now, you said, what's going to happen next year is the schools are going to now basically be able to divvy out money and pay.
Yeah, to a certain level. And Chris and Logan, coaches, the recruiting process is a sales process to convince someone to choose you over some many others of like ability, right? Or better. So you believe in the tooth fairy if you believe coaches aren't telling athletes, you could get X amount. That's why those athletes then turn around and say, wait a minute, you told me I was getting paid X. Well, basically what a coach is end up being is a liaison between you and whoever the NIL people are, in a lot of cases. Not in all, our situation, in many situations I'm aware of, people have NIL coordinators on campus that help with all that process. It's a whole nother bureaucratic layer that you have to deal with the universities, in helping the kids. Like taxes. A lot of kids made that money, had no idea about having to pay taxes. I think they'd be employees fully of the university if you could solve the insurance and workman's comp and all those different things. And the biggest thing that scares the school is once you have another layer of employees, you have another possibility for unionization by those athletes. And once you know what I mean? So you have all that. So it's very, very complicated. Me personally, I believe they should be paid. I like the idea that they can leverage who they are based on their name, image, and likeness and make the money they make. I think that the NCAA, in my opinion, should say they can do that. And if we are going to come down with the full hammer of the law that we have, if anyone who's associated with the university is making those things happen.
Coach, I was going to ask, so I think there's been a lot of good things that, a lot of good changes, just like you mentioned. One of the things that I think it would be really hard to be on the coaching side and not really know what your roster is going to look like the next year, depending on if people want to leave and go. And I'm not saying there's part of me that I'm like, I like the fact that players can say, hey, I can go and I don't lose a year of eligibility. But then part of me too is I don't know, it would be really, really hard to be on in your seat and trying to figure out, okay, who do we have, and who can we build around? And it's just, I don't know, that side of it to me, it seems like it would be really difficult.
It's definitely more challenging, Logan. For me as a coach, I coached because I was coached. My high school coach literally are the wings that lifted my life through basketball. And based on what he did to me, feeding me the game and feeding me life, that's what moved me to coach, the way people teach. And so I would tell you that I am someone that comes from a transformational relationship environment, and therefore I try to maintain that as much as I can. It's not going to happen with every athlete, but I'm much more motivated by a transformational relationship than a transactional one. What has happened is we are in much more transactional times. You're not going to have people for 4 years. And, the idea as a coach that you're building a program over X amount, you're building team to team. It's every year. Players can transfer every single year. Your team is not going to be the same from one year to the next. In order to keep up with the Joneses, you probably have to change your roster. And as you gain more resources in your program, you're going to have to, in order to, deal with the Gonzagas of the world, you're probably going to have to, move in that direction. I mean, every coach, that's, NIL and raising money for NIL and trying to figure out, what boosters are willing to help in that situation and what schools are doing now. That's 50% or more of your job now is trying to have that money available.
So you mentioned something, Coach, that I think is important, and I really like. Part of it is the line of work that I'm in, where relationships are really important. But I had a person in business that I look up to tell me when I was not too far out of school. He said relationships are more important than money, and he said money comes and goes, but relationships are really what are important in life. And I agree with you. Like, you think about just in our own lives, right? And you think about the three of us. I mean, our relationship started 20 years ago, and here we are all on this podcast. But when you think in your own life too, the relationships that, are generated by, your family, your friends, people close around you. I don't know. It's just an essential part of life. I completely agree, Coach. And that's, I like that you brought that up, because
That's what gets challenged though, Logan, is it's harder. Relationships take what? Time, right?
Time.
And like you said, it's 20 years here between with the three of us. And time and relationships, genuine, authentic relationships build trust. It's much more difficult to do that. It's also very difficult in recruiting for a coach because it's like speed dating now. When we recruited you, there's time that we took, there's a process to get to know each other. It serves the kid, it serves us. You're just doing different things to get to know people at a different level, and you make fewer mistakes because you get to know them better, and the kid tends to make fewer mistakes because they get to know school better. Now, when you hit the portal, by the time you hit the portal and people start recruiting you, there could be weeks. And all of a sudden, you're signing for a gargantuan amount of money because that's what you're motivated by. So it's much more transactional. And I think there are more mistakes made, and therefore that's why you have a multiplicity of transfers by one particular person. People look at kids and go, "Oh, he transferred all the time." Well, it's like you would change jobs too if you spent no time researching the job and all you did is go somewhere where the most money was offered to you. It's always in our best interest to investigate the people that we're going to be associated with and how that's going to affect what we're trying to get done. But, we're in an environment right now where money drives the whole decision-making process too often. And so you have mistakes made and people just go, okay, I'll just get back in the portal the next year. And then they just go get more money.
Where do you see personally college athletics being in 5 years? So in 2020, 2030, where are college athletics? Are they competing with any professional leagues? Or is that something that'll, never even come to fruition? What is college athletics in 5 years?
I think for sure, and again, this is, things change so rapidly, but I do think we're moving much closer to a professional, get rid of the amateur part of it. I think you could get to where academics is a choice more than it is a requirement for them because it's revenue generating. I think you will see, much more of an employee-based situation between the athletes and the school. They're representing the school in an extracurricular situation, the way coaches are, so they're paid as employees, and that other stuff will be taken care of. And and I think you could get much closer to where the requirement, the academic requirement, is less on them because of that. That would be my guess, just based on the way we're moving.
Is the NIL going to diminish what college is actually for? So, players are getting paid now. And, we don't need to make the argument on here because I think all three of us agree that they should be paid. And where that leads is, are they professional? Are they amateur, whatever. It's not this podcast. But the point that I want to make is what role does academics play now? Or is it important anymore? I mean, if a kid comes in, let's say he's making $3 million, that's life-changing money. And obviously you want to give him a well-rounded education, but if he's smart and he has good advisors around there, he can turn that $3 million into whatever he wants. So going to class, doing things like that, how are you going to keep kids focused on academics if the schools and the NCAA still say you have to be here by your freshman year, here by your sophomore year, junior year, senior year, you need to graduate unless you're going to go to the league? Like, what's going to happen to academics?
Chris, here's my deal. It's like if a freshman came in and they were a concert pianist and they were just at the top of the line, they were just one of the best in the world, and they were being paid an enormous amount of money to do that. I assume that they have no interest in gaining education. I think they would do just fine if education's what they want. I think the NCAA has guidelines based on eligibility to compete. And I think it's in the interest of the coaches and the support staff to make sure those players are meeting those guidelines. And players, for the most part, the guys that I've dealt with in my 33 years have a strong interest in achieving for themselves and for their families. A lot of these kids come from situations where they're first generation. They want to get their degree. Most of those kids want to get their degree. I think you will continue to see that. I think it is important for this NCAA to set standards and baselines of what they expect people to be at in order to compete. And then, money, if you like $3 million, and I got 3 million reasons why you would like $3 million, if you have a baseline to meet in order to get that $3 million, you're probably going to be more likely to meet your academic requirements, because that money, they've monetized school basically, because that's just part of the deal. It's not just playing basketball, baseball, volleyball, football. You have to go to class in order to be eligible. If you're not eligible and you're not able to compete, then that money goes away. So to me, it's always what they say is like, money doesn't make you something, but it just makes you more of what you already are. If you're a student and you really like the money, then, you and I have been in the workforce. If somebody gives me money and says you have to be up at 6, I'll be up at 5. Because if I really like what I'm getting paid, I'm going to do what I have to keep that going. So I don't necessarily see that as in and of itself a problem. Everything could be a problem, right? And
well, you said something interesting there, and I want to really ask about that. You said that in your 33 years, your experience is most of these kids that come and play want to get educated. I mean, is that really? I mean, are you?
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact. Not all of them have the background to. Most kids are smart enough to do what they need to do in college. What you see over the years is a lot of kids, particularly first generation, irrespective of race or whatever, first generation college students who have no one that has given them a background of what they need to do and how they need to do it, how to access resources, those type of things. Those students tend to have a more difficult time based on the organizational skills they need to compete at the collegiate level. But in terms of the desire to have a degree, not all, but most of the student athletes I have dealt with in 33 years, I've dealt with very few kids that do not give a rip about college and about going to class. Some of them don't like it. They don't enjoy it. They wouldn't say this is the first thing I want to do, but they do understand it's a means to an end. And so they do what they need to do.
I think there's a stereotype out there, and hearing it from you after 33 years, hopefully will open the eyes of a lot of people, because I think the stereotypical thinking out there is they're just going in there because they think they can make the league, or they're just going to go play basketball because they think they can go pro or whatever it is. But you've abolished
Chris,
that.
Here's the deal. If that's what gets you up in the morning, what your motivation is, we all have different motivations. What our why? It's interesting. Yesterday before the game, one of the central messages our head coach gave the team, we connect with your why. Whatever your why is, take it to the floor. Whatever motivates you to do what you're doing is not as important as you doing what you're supposed to be doing. So if being in the league is why I'm in college, and then there are baseline standards I have to meet in order to stay there and continue to do the things I need to do, why look a gift horse in the mouth? Why worry about, they're only there because of this? They're there and they're improving their lives. They're gaining knowledge. They're meeting people from various backgrounds. They're getting a liberal arts experience in terms of the holistic and totality of what education can bring to them. And they're better for it. And then most of them end up with degrees. athletes. And so they're better suited for the workforce because the vast majority of them will never play professional anything athletic. So
Right.
most kids
Right.
have a desire to get a degree. The one thing I would tell you, the one thing an athlete is, if he or she is nothing else, is competitive. And they don't like F's. They don't like not achieving. They don't like the idea that they're not good at something, including academic, even if it's hard for them. And it is hard for some of them because they don't have the background, a lot of them, for a lot of different reasons, but they're competitive. And so Bob C might be as impressive as Chris Werner's A in a class, because Bob has given you absolutely everything he's got, and he's pouring everything he's got into it. And his why may be something that you can't connect to, but it connects him and it gets him up every day and he works. I think stereotypes are intellectually lazy, period. And so people always want to put people in a box. Well, athletes are dumb jocks, or that's silly. Most athletes I meet and have met over 33 years are far smarter than the people who coach them, and they're far smarter than the general population that they go to school with.
Well, I think that's all very important, that what you just said, and I hope a lot of people are listening and hear that.
Coach, when did you get to the point where you kind of had that stance? I mean, the last part you said, many of the kids or athletes are smarter than even the coaches. Like, I mean, is that something that has taken you a while to kind of get to that place? I mean, for me, when you say that, Coach, I think you're being very humble. I mean, we all know that there's knuckleheads in life on kind of both sides. There's knucklehead kids and players. There could be knucklehead coaches, so anyways, it seems like, well, even since you I was a player for you. It seems like, and that's been almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, life has a way of teaching you things, but I don't know.
Well, when first off, when you were playing for me as an assistant, I was young and didn't even know what I didn't know. But this beard is not this color because I dye it. I mean, it's you learn things in life, but even then, I was impressed with the intelligence of what athletes have to do just to get half the grade. Somebody who gets to get up every day and just go to class and study and go home and watch Star Trek or whatever. I mean, these dudes are putting in and women are putting in a tremendous amount of time, minimum of 20 hours in addition to their studies per week. Plus they're having to, travel and do some things. And I'm not saying this for people to feel sorry for them. I'm just saying they're very, very bright people. They're very driven people. They're very self-motivated people. It's very difficult to be a collegiate athlete and to be a collegiate student. And so, I would say, even if 12 out of 15 on a roster are what you would consider bright, or, or better, even 10 out of 15, I guarantee you put 15 coaches in a room, you're going to be far less impressed than 10 out of 15 in terms of the totality of their knowledge and ability to articulate things outside their sphere. So I'm not saying anything other than that the stereotype is a very intellectually lazy stereotype of the dumb jock. I mean, are there some jocks that aren't brighter than a bulb on a tree? Yeah. But, there are also some nuclear physicists that you probably wouldn't be that impressed with and worry about what they were doing considering the job they have. So I've always been impressed with that, Logan, because, I've been right in the trenches with athletes. I know what they have to do and what they have, to maintain their status, the demands on their time. That 20 hours per week is a baseline for coaches not to go over. And I can tell you right now, that 20 hours is just a starting point for an athlete, because a self-motivated starting athlete like yourself, who was a freshman year in the conference, you spent 20 with the coaches. You probably spent at least half that amount of more time by yourself. So you're starting to spend 30 to 40 hours a week in basketball by itself. And then there are games and travel and all kinds of things.
Here's the other thing too, so some people say, well, it's like having a job. It's like having a job. And in a way, it is like having a job, but here's the difference. And there's other jobs that do this too. If being a college athlete is related to being a job, it's all about your body and physical fitness and, working. And so when you're done with that, you're tired. And so when you need to, fitting in the schoolwork and everything else outside of that, it's you're exhausted at times. And not only, as you know, coach, not only physically, but mentally you can be exhausted. And when you have a mentally exhausted player, it's probably worse than having them physically exhausted because it affects their physical, their physical output. But anyway, so
they're emotionally taxed because of the winning, the losing, the success, the failure. There's a lot of things that they go through. Again, this is not a feel sorry for athletes session. We just went from talking about some guys getting paid $5 million. So somebody at home is not exactly going to be crying over somebody who's dribbling a ball. I get it. I just think, again, we were talking about the subject of being, these guys and girls being less smart. They're actually, in most cases,
Right.
is what I'm saying, more smart. They have to be.
Right.
They're required to do way more. They're mentally, physically, emotionally taxed at a much higher level than the average person. Not to mention, in order to maintain their scholarship and their way of life that, we could all agree when you're making that much money that they are starting to make, they probably want to maintain that or build on it. It requires a tremendous amount of commitment, excuse me, guys, to be able to do that. So you asked me, when did I realize? I realized it very early on, but as I've watched this over 3+ years and watched the game closely and work with athletes, it's just a much clearer realization. And especially as we move more into a technology-based society and the things that they have to be able to do, I have a 5-year-old granddaughter and I'm amazed by her technological skills compared to mine, much less, and just because you're smart doesn't mean, that there's a difference, I think, in being a book smart, well-read person and having real intelligence, because access to information is not always a good thing, because it's really what you do with that information that matters.